Hey, how you doing? Thanks for downloading the show. Welcome to GardenFork Radio. My name is Eric. I'm your host. I talk about what I hope are interesting DIY eclectic things. I have a podcast and a YouTube channel also called GardenFork. Today we're talking about the Ida hurricane and some takeaways from it with my good friend Rick. Hello, sir.
Hey, brother. How you doing, my friend?
I'm drier than I was a day ago.
You guys have really got pounded up there in New York. What you made a record rainfall just a week ago, and then you surpassed it this last weekend. So,
yes,
good on you.
Yes, thank you, climate crisis. You know.
Oh, well, were you prepared for the storm? I mean, do you feel like everything went pretty well for you?
I was prepared. I am the Boy Scout, and of course, but were my friends and neighbors prepared? No. So that's why we're doing this podcast, so I can vent and give some strong suggestions to anyone that owns a basement.
Oh, well, that's not me. I wish we could afford a basement, but no one has basements around here. They're really hard to keep.
Well, they're fine until it becomes essentially a cement bathtub, you know?
Oh, well, I like swimming pools. You have an indoor swimming pool.
Yeah. So we were in Brooklyn for Hurricane Ida, and I'm looking at the Weather Underground app, and I don't know if their radar is any better than anyone else's. I think they all use relatively the same radar, but the weather aficionados are yelling at the podcast. So please let us know, radio@gardenfork.tv, what is the best weather app and radar app. But it looked like the storm was really whacking New Jersey and Connecticut, and New York City was going to be spared the bulk of it. And I'm like, we're fine. We're fine. And I have a sump pump. I call it a hardwired or hard piped sump pump in the basement. It's in essentially a plastic tub below the level of the cement floor. The floor is pitched to the sump pump, and I've got the backyard cleaned up, and all of a sudden it just starts dumping rain. And I'm like, wait a minute, this isn't supposed to happen, And in a lot of urban areas, your roof gutters are tied into your sanitary sewer. You can't just dump it out into the street. You probably shouldn't dump it into your backyard, because then it's going to really get into your basement. But if your sanitary sewer has tree roots creeping into it, or some sort of a physical impediment or clog, usually on its way in the last trap going out of the basement of your house, or if the sewer line on your street backs up because it's overwhelmed with storm runoff. I don't know if you saw some of the videos of what manhole covers doing the reverse and actually geysering in the streets of New York City.
Oh, I saw that. Yeah.
Yeah, that was right down. That was 3 blocks from my house. I live on a hill, and that was at the bottom of the hill.
Yeah, that was impressive.
So then all of a sudden your basement starts filling up with water, So we live in a hill on purpose, because my friends that live in the flat area near the bay or the harbor, there's more prone to flooding. So my sump pump worked just fine, but my neighbor called me at like 9:30 at night, and they never call. They always just text or something, and I'm like, what's wrong? And they're like, the basement is flooding. And these are my friends who happen to have a wine cellar in their basement. And I'm like, really? Oh, that's all that wine I like to drink.
I'll be right there.
Because my sump pump is hardwired into the sewer system, and we had a physical clog in our sewer system once with a flood. I bought a portable sump pump with a substantial length of hose. So I ran across the street. I've never seen this much rain, to the point that the street had like 6 inches of water running down it. And we got the pump hooked up into his basement, and we're saving the wine, But it was to the point.
At a time. Yeah, hand me the the corkscrew puller, so
Yeah.
we can empty this bottle so it'll float better.
Well, what people don't realize is that we live on a row house, and our row houses are 20 foot by 50 foot. So that's 1,000 square feet of surface area that is going into a rain gutter, into a 4-inch downspout, into your sewer line, which runs across the basement. And if that sewer line is clogged anywhere in your home, all that rainwater is going into your basement. And if it can't, and it goes into the basement by coming back out of your toilets and bathtubs. So the first floor of your house is getting flooded, and then the water drips down into the basement. If you have any openings in the sewer line in your basement, like for a sump, a dehumidifier, draining into the sewer line, or a utility sink, it comes out of there. So
Right.
you're fighting nature with an immense amount of water coming down. I think at one point we had 3 inches an hour.
Oh, wow.
So 3 inches times 1,000 square feet. I don't know how many gallons that is, but it's an awful lot of water.
It's a lot of water.
And they got spanked. I mean, with the little portable pump, which I think was like a quarter horse or half horse sump pump, we at least were able to keep the level from rising. And then once the rain died down, we could lower the level. So most of the wine, I don't know if it was saved is the right word, but there was a bunch of it submerged, and I think it just affects the label. It doesn't really affect the wine.
Right.
But it ruined their floors of their first floor. They had stuff in the basement, which was ruined. And what a mess. What a mess.
No kidding. No kidding. Of course, you guys aren't the only ones that had that kind of problems. Philadelphia went under pretty good. A lot of damage there. And of course, across the South, New Orleans and Mississippi don't want to minimize the problems that they have. But on the other hand, folks down south, here in Margaritaville Nord, Virginia Beach, we are kind of prepared all the time for a storm like that. Some people better than others, but we know they're going to happen. For it to happen to you guys, that's you say Sandy was a once in a lifetime event, but then here, right, less than 10 years later, you're going to have another one.
Yeah, I think this is the new normal.
I think so.
So I had a couple of thoughts, and I'd like to hear your thoughts as well, Rick. This is kind of people that own basement thoughts, but I know you have basement envy. So
I do.
So the number one thing is to get your junk off first of all, get rid of all your junk, and then the junk you are keeping, get it off the floor of your basement.
Good thought.
That's a deep thought right there. So
Yeah.
I bought some of those. It's called restaurant shelving. It's that stainless steel wire shelving that has the racks. And a lot of times they come with wheels. I think the wheels are like 4 inches in diameter. So you're essentially getting the stuff you do want to keep, like your winter blankets or stuff like that, or your portable drill press or your chop saw, is at least 6 inches off the floor at that point.
Right.
And if you have 6 inches of water in your basement, that's a lot, I think.
Yeah. Well, and it also gives you a chance, if it's on wheels, to roll it around, one to the kind of uphill side, because your basement does slope toward the center, toward the pump, but also to work around it so you can get things done when you're mopping or squeegeeing out the remnants and whatnot. It'll allow you to get it all and get the basement dried out faster.
You can also use pallets. You can cut pallets in half with a circular saw, so that makes the pallet essentially a 2-foot by 3-foot wooden thing that is 4 inches off the ground. And then the other thing I thought was, at least in urban areas like where I am, people will throw out a bed frame or a futon frame, and it's either metal or wood, but it's got little legs on it. And it has the metal slats or wood slats, and you can cut those in half, and that's another way to get your stuff up off the floor of the cement floor.
Yeah. Well, let me ask you this. Your friends that you went down and rescued their wine, how high did it actually get in the basement on the wall? How deep was it?
Well, the wine cellar was actually below. It was about It's I don't know how wide they built it, or how is supposed to how you used to do it, but they dug through the basement floor about 2 feet, so you stepped down to go into the wine cellar. So the wine cellar
Mm.
was essentially a swimming pool. It looked like a lap pool in the basement, and
Ah,
it
I
was at
see.
least a
Yeah.
foot. It was a foot deep because some pumps need a certain depth of water to operate, and we'll talk about that later in the show, actually. Um, but thankfully, I wasn't the one in the wine cellar for the most part. I let the owner, my friend, I just made sure the hoses were running, and then I was like, okay, I'm going to go back home for a while.
Yeah. You've got this.
Or you could also put shelving on your walls to get stuff up there. But I think that the biggest thing is take a hard look at what you're really keeping in the basement and do a yard sale or Craigslist style free stuff. Or literally, what I do is I put it out on the curb with a free sign, and you'd be surprised what people will take. We had a down comforter that we realized we no longer use anymore, and I put that out, and it was gone in an hour. You know, it was a nice comforter. It just was we had some others. We just didn't need it all, and that to clean up a down comforter after a flood, you know.
Yeah, I was just going to say that, a lot of stuff you probably shouldn't store in the basement at all, and things like linens and wool and fabrics or cardboard even. For things you're going to keep, higher, maybe going up with it to store it is far superior to store it in the damp basement, particularly after a flood.
Yeah. The aha moment for me with helping my friend was the fact that I had this portable sump pump, and it's the hose. It's a cheap hose I bought for it. It looks like a vacuum cleaner hose, but it's an
Hmm.
inch and a half diameter hose. And I originally had it. The first time I used it, it has a series of adapters on the pump for different diameter hoses, and there's one for garden hose. You can just screw a garden hose onto it, and run it out the window of your basement ever. But by the diameter of a garden hose in the interior is maybe half inch, maybe 5/8 inch, and it will not keep up with water flooding into your basement. It's like it's a trickle compared to the amount of water coming in your basement. So if you're trying to keep the level from rising or trying to pump out your basement, the garden hose diameter just doesn't cut it. So I would get a larger one, or I think from like Northern Tool or Harbor Freight, you can buy almost fire hose diameter hose that'll hook up to a portable sump pump, and that
Wow.
moves water much faster.
Yeah, when we had our sailboat, all of my pump hoses were at least an inch and a half, or maybe 2 inches. And that, because you need that, too much back pressure and it just stops the flow. Not stops it, but impedes it, so it really doesn't work.
Right.
We had one occasion. I think I've told this. I'm sure I've told this story. I've only got one story. I've
There's
got one
several, but you
story
tell
and
them
one
often.
story and one joke. I mean, last time you told me no more about okra, so I'm not telling you any more stories about okra. But we were halfway between Bermuda and the islands, um, Charlotte Amalia down in St. Thomas, and the alarm went off. It said there's water in the bilge, and start putting my feet down because I was in the bunk. It was 2 o'clock in the morning, and put my feet down. I was in several inches of water,
Row.
and yeah, and so we first thing we do is fire up the engine and get the engine driven pump switched over to start pumping out the boat. But then I had these two portable pumps, and I was pumping one into the sink and the other out into the cockpit. And we got the water down pretty fast. It was really a fairly minor leak through it's called a stuffing gland. It's where the propeller goes through the hull. The propeller shaft goes through the hull, and got that taken care of. But if we had smaller diameter hose on all that stuff, it would have run really hard and seemed like it was working, but you could put your hands down around a pump that has too much back pressure and actually feel the water flowing out away from the pump. Because it's a centrifugal pump is shoving as much as it can into the hose, and the rest of it is escaping out the sides again.
Wow. I'll link in the show notes here to the sump pump that I got. And also don't cheap out on pumps. It's if you buy a cheap one, it's going to break. It's like $120. I think you're going to spend $120 on a pump. But it is, I mean, what's the value of, that if your chop saw is on the floor and it gets flooded, that's your chop saw is $150. So
right. Well, and people, and this is a personal thing. I have been on the edge of survivalist life all my life, I think. But you just need to be able to do something until the authorities get there, whether it's get your power back on or pump out the basement or feed yourself or take care of minor emergencies or survive during extreme cold with no electricity or extreme heat with no electricity. You need to be able to have a mindset that says, I can do this. We can do this. It's unpleasant, but I can do a little adversity. I'll get by it. Because it may be 2, 3, 4 days. Down in Louisiana now, they're saying it may be 30 to 60 days before people get electricity.
Yeah.
You just need to be able to fend for yourself and fend for your neighbors. We have plenty of food aboard, and we are willing to share it with neighbors. When this whole pandemic thing started, we substantially increased our allotment to the food bank.
Oh, right. You told me that. Yep.
Yeah. As a way of it'd be nice to say I did it out of the Christian kindness of my heart. But the truth is I was protecting myself and ourselves. Hungry people are desperate people, and desperate people are dangerous people. And we've been giving a substantial amount of money to the food bank every month so that we don't have the kind of
zombie apocalypse.
Yeah, that's it. Zombie apocalypse stuff going on that would be dangerous for everybody. If everybody pitches in a little bit, everybody helps some. We can kind of get through it together.
I helped my neighbor because I knew that if I pumped out his basement, there might be some wine for me.
See?
I mean, it could be your neighbor makes really good macaroni and cheese, So now I'm thinking, I should buy 2 portable pumps and I can help 2 families, and then I'll get macaroni and cheese and the wine, I'm joking, but, my friends call, I help them. Okay, I'm going to let you behind the curtain here. I'm building a new pizza oven that uses a brick arch in a 55-gallon drum. And I took pictures of that, and I posted it using the Patreon app to my patrons. So they get an email saying, hey, Eric posted these pictures, and they can read it right in the email, or they can get a notification if they have the Patreon app on their phone or iPad or other device. And that is kind of one of the behind-the-scenes things that I share with the patrons, because I'm always asking you, hey, become a patron, and you get the behind-the-scenes stuff, and I'm thinking, well, they don't really know what the behind-the-scenes stuff is. Is it me tying my shoelaces? No. It's pictures of the dogs and what I'm building on and what is failing. I'm less and less enamored of public social media. I'm more and more loving the idea of the GardenFork crew and people that are kind of like-minded about doing stuff and sharing stuff, but maybe not sharing it with the whole world because, the world's a little crazy out there. So anyway, not the usual Patreon blurb. What do you call this? Pitch, I guess. But more information about signing up is in the show notes, or go to patreon.com/GardenFork. Patreon.com/GardenFork. All right. Thank you.
our tomato harvest this year has just been so amazingly abundant. I have blanched and frozen tomatoes. Our freezer is full. We've done everything you can imagine. We've eaten so many tomatoes that I began to get a little bit of acidosis. Where
Ah,
you just so much acid in my system, and I've been giving them away to my neighbors, and it's really been amazing. Um, when you give something away like that, tomatoes, figs, I've been giving a lot of figs away. That O word that I'm not allowed to mention anymore.
yeah.
I've been giving a lot of that away after we froze as much as we possibly could. And there's this little reading table next to the front door, next to our chairs there. And it's like a little altar. And every day or so, these offerings appear on the altar to us. And it's really been kind of cool. We got some great shit out of the. Oops, I said that word, didn't I?
It's okay.
Out of just being really generous with our vegetables and people around your neighborhood. They know us now, and they of course have been here a long time, but they're not going to say when finally go crazy. They're not going to say, well, he was kind of a loner and kept to himself. We didn't know much about him. They'll say, no, he was like that all the time, but he was
Yeah.
really good growing okra and tomatoes.
Strange guy, good vegetables.
Yeah, yeah. They
Yeah,
kind of go together.
karma is boomerang. So I wanted to circle back to talking about the sump pumps because another of my neighbors,
Just you and your sump pumps. So it's all you talk about, chainsaws and sump pumps. Don't you have another topic?
yes. Yes, I do. It's the wet dry vac. So my other neighbor texted me and said, "Hey, I got water in my basement. Can I borrow your pump?" And I'm like, "Well, I don't have another pump. Let me come take a look." And he had puddles of water in his basement, and a sump pump needs at least an inch of water. More than that, it works even better. And I'm like, the sump pumps just won't work here. A shop vac. I think Rigid owns the name shop vac, so we call it a wet dry vac. They're the
Right.
orange drum with the black plastic head kind of vacuum.
Right.
They are great at sucking up puddles of water. Take the paper filter out of the vacuum and just suck away. And then you fill it up halfway and you lug it over to up the stairs and dump it. So I think you should have a sump pump and you should have a decent size wet dry vac. And you will be on your way to having a dry basement.
Even a smaller wet dry pump. It's called a bucket head. And, it fits on a 5-gallon. We use them for honey collecting all the time.
Yeah.
You know what I'm talking about. They're the
5-gallon
orange and
buckets.
the orange and the blue buckets you see all over those stores.
Yep.
And it snaps onto it. It has a wet and dry function. Just take the paper filter off, like you said. Easy to get into small places. Easy to get upstairs. When you're doing smaller projects and you just need to vacuum while you're drilling or sanding or something on a
True. Good
piece
point.
upstairs. And it's easier to carry when it's half or 3/4 full of water and getting it up to the street level to pour it out and take it back down. And they're really inexpensive. In fact, one of the nice things about the bucket heads in that case is you can pull the head off and put it on another bucket immediately. Then another person can take that full bucket out and pour it, and you can keep vacuuming water.
That is brilliant. I did not realize that. Wow. That's worth having you on the
So-
show, Rick.
It's also my bee vacuum. Now you just for people that think that you can get bees by vacuuming them up, you've got to have an air outlet on your bucket itself, or else you'll have bee pate in the bottom of your bucket
Right.
using one of these. But I use it for my bee vacuum. I use it around the shop. It's wonderful for all kinds of things.
That's I had not thought about the bucket head type wet dry vac, and I've seen those at the store because when I do a job, I always have to lug around it's like a 15-gallon wet dry vac, and I'm like, oh, I got to lug it up the stairs, and it's kind of bulky. But that's brilliant that you could do a chain gang, kind of system of two people hauling the water out. You could have 2 5-gallon buckets, your sump pump, and your wet dry vac. Wet dry vac stuff, switch off the head, drop the sump pump into the 5-gallon, turn it on, pump that water out the window. Wow, we're really geeking out on this. Very exciting podcast here.
Yeah, just lots of things to think about. But mostly it's be at least minimally prepared to do for yourself for 3 to 5 days. And it's not difficult if you buy 2 or 3 extra cans of ranch beans or whatever at the store. When you go to the store and you build a supply and you rotate them out. I have been, and I really want to give during this pandemic thing, a shout out to the LDS, the Church of Latter-day Saints.
Yes.
Regardless of all the door knocking and all the other stuff they do, boy, they live their beliefs. We have gotten flatbed after flatbed of trailer bed of food for our food bank from their underground stores around Salt Lake City, Utah. And it's not just us they've been supplying. They've been shipping it all over the country.
Yep.
Helping with the food crisis. And I really applaud that kind of thing. And, everybody has to have some backup, and everybody needs some help. Is going to need some help at some time. And so it's best to pay it forward a little bit.
Yeah. I mean, that's kind of like, I think a lot of GardenFork listeners are very much like that as well. I just get emails from people where they have seen something we've done and that, hey, I did that too. And I think that extends to the kind of karma is boomerang, go help your neighbor kind of thing. The other thing is I've also found that people, it doesn't hurt to have a couple of Labradors, because then when you walk around, you get to meet all your neighbors. So, and they might not remember your name, but they're going to remember your dog's names. And that's kind of, oh, this is Spike and Andy's dad. Hi, Spike and Andy's dad,
we do the same thing with people.
It works. It works.
Yeah. But, being known in your neighborhood and just being a little bit generous and not so defensive. I, through Nextdoor, realized that I have some very defensive neighbors, maybe not close to me, but in this area. And I'm like, man, there's something wrong with you. But, I'm sorry, I'm going off a tangent there. But we'll talk about okra instead.
We have a new review.
Oh, really? Who is this brave person?
I'm going to read a previous one because I can't remember if I read this one or not, but it says top notch, 5 stars by JPDUP. JPDUP. I've been enjoying the show for quite some time. I don't often have time for many podcasts, but this has always been a go-to for me. Keep up the great work. Yay.
Oh, how nice. Wonderful. Thank you so much.
And the latest one is by, it says Best DIY Podcast, 5 stars by FF Hex. It's FFHEXTHJU. And whoever that is knows who they are. I don't know. Will you email me radio@gardenfork.tv because I'm very curious about your name. It says, I've been listening to every episode of Eric and GardenFork for more than a decade. Has it been that long? It is in my top 3 after searching and trying many dozens of podcasts. Oh, it is okay. It is in my top 3 after searching and trying many dozens of podcasts. I learned something useful from every episode. It's just pleasant to listen to. Very motivating, well made, and interesting. There you go.
Well, thank you so very much.
Thank you, FFHEXTHJU.
We'll just call him Hex. Thank you, Hex.
Thank you,
yeah.
Hex. Yeah.
But and we appreciate those. We don't. There's no money in podcasting. It's like beekeeping. We always say there's no money in honey, and podcasting is kind of the same way if you're doing it at this level of podcasting, and so we run on compliments and good thoughts, and we appreciate every one of them. And if we're doing something wrong or if you have suggestions, be sure and let us know. We are certainly not the sole authority. Well, I am, but Eric occasionally makes mistakes.
Oh, I have an email here from a listener. It's something about okra. It's complaining about the amount of okra we talk about.
You dog.
All right, so actually, you can support GardenFork through our Patreon, and that's always a fun thing. I post to that. It just depends on the day as to what I just put pictures or thoughts and the always interesting after show. And we're going to talk about beekeeping actually in the after show because Rick, do you have bees? Actually, you can answer the question about if you have bees or not in the after show. So that's
it's
a little
secret.
thing.
Yeah.
A little bit of support every month, and you get all the after shows either emailed to you or in the Patreon app, which is a lot of fun. So radio@gardenfork.tv. Let us know if you want to hear more about okra or not. Right, Rick?
That's right. Yeah. And I'm sure everyone is desperately interested in okra. But boy, I love it. Did I tell you it was a hibiscus? You did. I did. Okay.
Yes.
Well, I think that's probably it for today. Please sign up at Patreon to support the labs. You're not going to support Eric particularly, but the labs need kibble and they need good walks, and you're helping to support that.
All right. Thank you, everyone. Go out and make it a cool day, and we'll see you later.
Talk to you later, my friend. Bye-bye.
GardenFork Radio is produced by GardenFork Media, LLC in Brooklyn, New York. Our producer is Sean O'Neill. If you need an amazing podcast producer, visit Sean's site, SeanInBrooklyn.com. That's Sean, SEAN, in Brooklyn.com. Our executive producer is Jimmy Goose. For more information about Jimmy and the custom hollow books he makes, visit hollowbooks.com. The music in the show is licensed from audioblocks.com and uniquetracks.com.